Hi, I am Todd Simmons. I'm the Executive Director of Jefferson Performing Arts Society, and we are here to have our community conversation in preparation for In the Heights, which opens on October 7th at the Jefferson Performing Arts Center. Our panel today is here to talk about where the Latinos and who the Latinos are in the New Orleans region. I'm going to ask, starting with Brenda, if you would introduce yourself to us and give us a little bit about background about you.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brenda Melara. I'm a first-generation Hispanic American born here in New Orleans, raised here in New Orleans. And my parents immigrated to the United States in the late 60s from Guatemala. Actually, they came each on their own and met here in New Orleans. So they just happened to be from the same city in Guatemala, but when they met here in New Orleans, they were vacationing and decided just to stay here because they really, really enjoyed it. So here I am.
Lucas.
Well, how you doing, everyone? My name is Lucas Barrios. I moved to New Orleans in 1979 when I was 16 and a half years old. I came to New Orleans because of my middle brother used to live here. So I went to Delgado Community College to learn English, ESL. And from Delgado, I jumped to Loyola University, where I hold a master's degree in political and military science. I'm from Honduras, and I have a very strong connection with Honduras and New Orleans. And I'm sure you guys know the connection between La Ceiba and New Orleans dates back to the 50s. And that is because of the banana trade. So thank you to be here.
Great to have you, Lucas.
Pleasure to meet you, Lucas.
My name is Salvador Longoria. I was born in Cuba, but I came here with my family in the 60s after the revolution. We actually came to New Orleans because my great-great-grandmother was from New Orleans. Well, we're not born here, but lived in New Orleans. So we had certain connections here. And so we just landed in Miami, came here. So I grew up here. I went to school here. I went to Loyola undergrad, Loyola Law School. I'm a practicing attorney, but I wear many different hats. I've worked with nonprofits, with RTA Commission. I'm now teaching at Loyola Law School. So I wear many hats, but you know, I came here as a little kid and I grew up in New Orleans. But like Lucas, I mean, I'm still very, very connected and very, very involved with everything that's going on in Cuba, as sad as it is.
Well, it's great to have you, Sal.
Thank you.
And Max.
Yes, my name is Max Ferrera, and I'm like Lucas to a great degree. I am the typical acculturated Honduran. I was born in Tela, Honduras, back in 1951. I was one of perhaps hundreds of thousands that migrated up here about 1954 on the United Fruit banana boats. I obviously grew up here in New Orleans. I got very involved with the Hispanic Chamber. That's where I first met Sal. I'm going back to when I was at WWL-TV, WVUE-TV. So Sal and I have been around a long, long time. But yes, grew up here. About the only time I left New Orleans, after my father passed away, I went to the MEBA Marine Academy up in Baltimore, Maryland, back in about 1970 for a short period of time. Came back here, went to school at Tulane University to major in Spanish literature, and my Spanish is probably worse today than it was back at Tulane. So that basically frames Max Ferrera.
Thank you, Max. Great to have you here. Great to have everybody here for today's discussion. Along with the production of In the Heights, we will be presenting a photo exhibit called In the Parish. And this is to explore the local Latino community's origins and experience. For the whole panel here, do you think that most New Orleanians know and or understand the local Latino community? And what would you say are some of the most common misconceptions and misunderstandings?
Brenda,
whoever likes to go first.
I think that the older generations do understand the Latino population that has established itself here. I think the newer population that has immigrated here maybe in the past 10 years don't realize the history that has been established here since the 50s, possibly. They're newcomers. And so that may be the challenge for them to understand that we've been here for a long time now and how we've transitioned. New Orleans is unique in the sense that the people that have immigrated here, like Sal was saying earlier, right now, the majority have been families that have moved here just to help rebuild the area. But every time something has occurred, either in Central America or in the Caribbean, people have immigrated here to New Orleans. They've kind of escaped and made New Orleans home, but they've come for different reasons. And those are the different, working in the school system for many, many years, probably 18 years, I was able to see the different waves of families that were moving into the area. They were coming for, because maybe there was a war in their country, so they were escaping. Others were just coming because if they were coming from other cities in the United States, they were coming because it was maybe just a better place for them to live. It was the cost of living was less for them here, so they moved here. Others were coming for escaping, well, now in the past maybe 5 to 8 years or even 10 years, they're escaping the different political situations in their country that not necessarily war, but it is kind of a war when you're being taxed by a gang member and your lives are being threatened. So New Orleans, in that sense, I think the newcomers don't realize the history of the Latinos here, but the older generations do.
In terms of misperception, I mean, I'm answering the question from the angle of the non-Latino community and how they see us. And I think that, like we had discussed before, I think we're a very hidden community. I don't think, I think maybe because we're not from one nationality or we live in one part of the city, we're kind of like all over the place. So we're not as visible as maybe we could be. Like I was just pandering some numbers with other panel members earlier about how large the Latino population is in the metro area and in the state, yet it really isn't visible and it isn't even, I don't think, recognized as being such an integral part of the community. And one of the points about Brenda is that I don't think people realize, and I think one of the misperceptions is that the history of Latinos here, when Max mentioned Honduras and Luke's mentioned Honduras and the United Fruit and all that, I mean, you know, New Orleans used to be the gateway to the Americas. It wasn't Miami, it wasn't New York, it wasn't Houston. We used to be the gateway to the Americas. We had all the consulates in them, you know, we were the connection. Somebody dropped the ball there, obviously, because then Miami and Houston and the other cities took over. And but historically, the first census of New Orleans in like 1700, there were already people from the Caribbean and from Central America living here. So the connection, you know, the cultural and historical connections between being a Latino from South America, Central America, the Caribbean, and New Orleans are unbelievable. And I think that's something that most people don't understand. And I think there's been a lot of misinformation about that.
Well, the first newspaper was in Spanish was printed here in New Orleans.
Right.
So we do go back a long, long way, but yeah, you're right. You're correct about that.
Taking on Salvador's point, if we look back at history, when Louisiana was ruled under Hispanic rule, it actually prospered a lot more than when the French, you know, governed the state of Louisiana. And when France lost the war, I remember that there was a commission of people who went to France to beg the king as to why would France surrender Louisiana to Spain. But the misconception comes from not only what the diversity of many people coming from all over Latin America, but it comes from back then, because if you take a look at the French Quarter, the architecture of the French Quarter is not even French, it's Hispanic. So, you know, and also, I would say that most people migrated from New Orleans, because when I came here, I used to live around Elysian Fields in St. Claude, and there was a huge concentration of Hispanics in that area. In fact, if you take Elysian Fields and you cross the bridge towards the lake, as soon as you came down on the lake on your right-hand side, there used to be a huge Cuban population in there.
Right.
You know, so you know, I remember back in the day, and really the misconception that I can point out, most people will throw us in there into one pot. Okay, so somebody look at you, and most of the time, and will say, okay, so you're from Mexico, which to me is, I don't have anything against Mexico because I love Mexican people, but to me it's a little of kind of like an insult, because we hear from all over Latin America, mostly from Central America, and I would say the majority of the Hispanics living in the metro area, Jefferson Parish, New Orleans, are from Honduras. In fact, at one point, we were
the largest group.
The third largest city of Hondurans, leaving us outside, basically, outside of the country. It was here in New Orleans. And, so I would say that the misconception, in fact, it has to do with, like the media as well, because the media has never looked at us as a good source of like stories, for instance. There's a lot of things that the community has done in relevant things, but that doesn't, I guess, that doesn't sell in the local media. I know that some local media, our traditional media are making strides to include a segment of Hispanics doing this, Hispanic doing that. But even so, the coverage of like the major festivals and Latino festivals in the city, like Pasa or the Cannon Fest, they don't cover, local media doesn't cover that.
It's hard to read.
It is a shame.
It's true. It's true. We've done the festival for 11 years now, and every year it's a struggle to get coverage, even for them to mention it for a minute on their news stations. And we're telling them it's the largest free admission festival for the Latinos in the area. You need to come cover this,
The
it's
largest and the most relevant, Brenda. Yeah. I would say
and
so.
Yes, but and so that's why we've had to take it upon ourselves as a community to honor and acknowledge those strong leaders within our group, because no one else acknowledges them, or if they do, it's here and there. But I think too, going back to the question in the original question, I think we were very, very just in the background as a community until 2005. Once Katrina hit, and everybody started moving in to help rebuild, and it was the Latinos who were rebuilding New Orleans and all that. That's when we started kind of like coming to the forefront as a community, because people started realizing, and even us, the locals, we started seeing a lot of changes within our community. Whereas before, workers never gathered at a Home Depot or a Lowe's for work. That was something strange. We had never seen that before as a community here. And we were starting to see that. So even as the local community, after 2005, we went through this change where we started having to accept other things that had never happened in this community, that were happening in other communities, in other cities in the United States, but we had never experienced because those people were moving in. But I think that was the moment where our community came to the forefront, and they started mentioning how many people were living here in New Orleans. In fact, it grew so quickly. The Mexican consulate had left New Orleans before Katrina because they weren't having they left because their services were not relevant here. They had a consulate and they were just spending money here. They didn't have to be here. So they had moved away, and they had just said anybody that needed services could go to Houston. But after Katrina, they had to come back and reopen their consulate, which is still operating, and it's very, very busy all the time. And even President Bush had to come in, and he was there the day it was inaugurated. And so that's how quickly the community started to boom.
Mexicans are now the second largest group now behind Hondurans.
Exactly. And that had never been
negligible. Before Katrina, we hardly had any Mexicans, which is bizarre because we had Texas, it was 1 million Mexicans, and we had none here. But post Katrina, Honduras first, Mexico second, which is a real change in the city. Yeah.
And it's a close second.
Just look at the amount of Mexican restaurants in the area.
Even that changed. Yeah.
Right. Even that changed. Like when Brenda and I used to, hang out at school, finding a Mexican restaurant was like almost impossible, really, back in the day. Not
A
A
anymore.
true Mexican restaurant.
Along with the exponential growth post-Katrina, 300 and something percent St. Tammany, 100 and something percent Jefferson, Orleans, has been a certain blowback. Because I mean, when non-Latinos see more Latinos in their neighborhood and more Latinos, then you get certain negative things, you know, as well. Like there were some ordinances passed to like try to shut down some of the food trucks, and there've been negative. I remember the guy that was beat up on Canal Street by some NOPD trainees at a restaurant, you know, and I don't know. It just, I remember after the Hard Rock collapse, that poor Latino worker that was deported, you know, I mean,
Right.
so
Yes,
you do get
because
some,
he spoke up.
you get some
Well-
negative stuff that comes towards us then, because then we're seen as a threat, you know, and then there are obviously groups that are stoking misinformation, you know, about who we are and what we represent and all that stuff, which just feeds into that, which really breaks my heart, because I think we're a hidden community, but we're a hardworking community, and we're an intrinsic part of the city in the metropolitan area, and we have been since its inception.
Yeah. You know,
Correct.
I couldn't agree anymore. And Brenda and I had a brief conversation at the Jefferson Parish Arts Center not too long ago. Sal, you know, Lucas, everybody, it's perception. You know, it's when Sal, I'm like you, I'm looking from the outside in. And when you mentioned the Latino or the Hispanic population, you know, people kind of go, oh yeah, the guy that down the street that cuts my lawn, or, oh yes, my maid, or yes, it's kind of like boiled down into a very diminutive stage, which has always bothered me personally, because there are so many successful Hispanics. But again, it goes back to perception. Okay, what is out there? And I have to say, unfortunately, in my broadcast career, 40 years in broadcast, the thing that, Sal, I go back to mainstream businesses and media again, they only remember the blemishes, the bad things that maybe
Right.
some Hispanic business did or did not do. Did they pay their bill? You know, this and that. And that's what I have run into in my career in broadcast.
That's so true.
Okay. So you take this one little small entity that might have been, didn't meet the expectations that they should have, but then you throw the whole Latino population into that one perception.
But it's also
And
like,
that's
that's what
always been a huge hurdle.
Brenda was saying. We can't get media coverage of the festivals, and that half of the new business permits are for Latino businesses in Kenner and Jefferson Parish, and that the growth of the diversity of cuisine all over the city, with Peruvian restaurants now and Colombian restaurants. But let one Latino go out and kill a couple of people, and
Right.
boy, it'll be on the front page of the paper, and it'll be on all the news, you know,
Right.
to
Right.
feed, you know, and it's to feed the
And-
storyline that's just unfortunate.
And that was why we created the Pasa newspaper, which is a complement to the show. The show is 12 years old now, but the paper is only 5 years old. And I have a journalism background. I have a degree from the University of New Orleans in drama and communications. And I decided, you know, we need to complement the show with a newspaper, because if no one else is highlighting our leaders or our community, you know, the accomplishments of our youth, of our Latino youth, we have to do it ourselves. So that's why I decided to do the paper, and it focuses on art, culture, and entertainment. But at the same time, I always try to highlight someone that the community is not aware of, that is out there doing wonderful things, whether it's in education, in sports, in the arts, in music, in some way, you know, just so that people that pick up the paper, and the paper is in a bilingual format, and that was done on purpose, so that anyone that is curious about who we are as a community can pick up the paper and read the same article that a Spanish speaker is reading. Okay. And the reason we did that too is because we want to dismiss all these stereotypes and misconceptions or perceptions of what the Latino community is here in New Orleans. We have a lot of professionals here. People that you would be, I mean, that you would be shocked to know that they were even Latinos. I mean, a lot of people did not know that Amanda Shaw is actually half Latina. Her mother is from Guatemala.
I didn't know that.
And nobody knew
no
that
idea.
until we had her at the festival at
That's
Pasa
why she
Fest.
sings so well, I guess.
Wow.
Brenda,
I didn't know that.
little humor here.
We highlighted, we invited her at the festival that celebrates Hispanic heritage. And when people were like, why is Amanda Shaw, you know, performing? Well, did you know this? And she talked about her heritage, and she talked about her mama and how she's traveled to Guatemala. And so,
Wow.
you know, so it's those little things like that that people don't realize, that it goes much deeper. You know, our roots here in Louisiana are much deeper than just what you see, you know, so.
Well, speaking of news, recently, last week, all the TV stations covered the fact that the Honduran government had not paid the rent for the consulate, that the consulate was closed because they haven't paid the rent.
Yeah.
You know, like everybody's saying, all the negative stuff, you know, like all my friends that were texting me, you know, like,
Is
like,
this true?
look, why you guys didn't pay the rent, you know? And I said, well, we're collecting money so we can pay the rent. So how much are you gonna put, you know, like GoFundMe, pay whatever. But yeah, we are as far as the media, really, we're kind of like invisible to the stream media. That's the reality. And like you said, Brenda, the newspaper, our newspaper, because I'm part of it.
Oh, you're part of it.
You know, it kind of like showcases things that for most people we're not aware of. You know, okay, so I didn't know this person, like you said, about Amanda. You know, and just so people know, I'm friends with a lot of the local traditional jazz musicians, and believe me, the majority of them, they have roots back in Honduras. People don't know that. You know, so the connection is very strong in so many senses: food, music, and art.
And you know what disappoints me though, Lucas, at the root of this whole issue was, why would the Honduran government, with a new president, why would they allow a consulate not to be up to date on their rent when the second greatest population of Hondurans are right here in the city of New Orleans? That's the kind of stuff that I look back at and go, well, typical government has never functioned very well for its people, but you know, that I've got an issue with that. What is the deal with that? Okay,
I can answer the question because I was a consul of Honduras in San Francisco for 4 years, and then I was the consul of Honduras in Veracruz, Mexico. In fact, I opened up the consulate in Veracruz. So it's a mixed responsibility. First, it was the old government who authorized that consulate to be in the same building as the immigration the thing, and that was not authorized by the ex-consul of Honduras. That was authorized by the director of the consular affairs from the Minister of Foreign Relations in Honduras. So here's what, you know, every month the consul gets, besides its salary deposit into his account, he gets another deposit to pay for expenses. So I am so astonished as to the fact that they allow so many months to go by, and those months, the majority of those months go back to the old administration. You know, so
all right,
that was, you know, that's you know, you kind of like have to know to differentiate between the politics and the really, you know, how it's handled, basically.
I understand. Okay.
We've talked about how the Latino community is seen by the public, but how, when you hear the phrase Latinos in New Orleans, what do you think of? And how would you describe the Latino community here? And then second part of that is, you feel because so many more are in Jefferson Parish, you feel there's a reason for that? Is there a divide between Orleans and Jefferson?
Well, I think more people live in Jefferson Parish because of economics. I mean, you know, Orleans Parish is just a price for a lot of, you know. I know a lot of Latino families that used to live in Orleans and here in my neighborhood near City Park that now live in Jefferson because it's just more affordable. But although I think traditionally, I think Max or Brenda mentioned, I mean, like for Cubans or Lucas, on the other side of Elysian Fields, and we had a very derogatory name for that neighborhood, which I'm not going to say on this panel, but I'll tell y'all later. We had a Cuban bakery right there on the other side of the bridge and all that stuff. And that neighborhood moved. Most of those people went to Kenner and to Metairie or the West Bank or whatever. But I do think that the divide between Orleans and Jefferson also, it just, separate apart from economics is also like, well, I mean, I don't think it's that significant. I think there's more of an, I have to inject this in here somewhere. There's maybe more of an anti-immigrant feeling in Jefferson than there is in Orleans, because I think Orleans is much more diverse and recognizes its diversity more. Whereas there are some forces in Jefferson that are and stoked recently by an anti-immigrant fervor and by misinformation about the undocumented and about, that we're all traffickers and drug whatever. And I think a lot more people believe that in Jefferson than in Orleans, unfortunately. But I mean, I think we can't have this panel discussion without noting that we have gone backwards recently in terms of immigrant rights, in terms of diversity, and in terms of the recognition of minority communities across the board, including Latinos in this nation and here in New Orleans. And that's unfortunate because that does lead to really sad, consequences in different areas for Latinos. And I think in Jefferson Parish, I can't believe that there's not a council person in Jefferson Parish that's Latino. I can't believe that the mayor of Kenner isn't Latino.
Sal, you took the words
council
out
in
my
Kenner
mouth.
aren't Latino. I mean, like, where are we? Where
Right.
Anyway.
Let
I
me
Well,
tell you,
I
I firmly
I don't think we
believe,
have a Latino one though. I think you're right. I don't think we have a council person who's Latino.
No, we don't.
no,
And I think that the divide is also the school system. Here in Jefferson Parish, the school system is very, very open to receiving these families and registering their children in the school system. Orleans, because it's a charter system and all of that, it's not one big school system like it is here, where it's organized here, and Jefferson Parish has the largest ESL program in the state. It's got thousands and thousands of children in the program. So they've got that thing going where they understand the program. They have their schools that are like all selected that are teaching these. So it's a very well organized system. So I think that families with young children, they obviously, we used to have families come in and try to register their children at the school system in JP, and they were living in New Orleans because they didn't understand that, no, you live in Orleans Parish, your child needs to go to Orleans Parish schools. But when they realized you have to live here, that's when they would make the move. Okay. Or that's one thing. School system is very important. The other thing is community. There are neighborhoods in Jefferson Parish where you have a large, for example, Lake Avenue veterans, from veterans all the way to Hammond Highway. That's a large Guatemalan community there.
All the apartments,
Yes. So when you have a new family come in, they're like, oh, you can come live with me or come live next door to me. That apartment's open or empty, and you can come live here, because all of them help each other out. The same thing like with the Dominicans, that community helps each other out. The Hondurans help each other out. Not that they wouldn't help somebody else from another country, but I'm just saying these little pockets in the area where you have these families that have been living here for a while now. When they know someone's moving into the area, they open their arms to them and they say, or their houses, and say, come live with us until you get your feet on the ground, and you can move out on your own. So all of that has a lot to do with the families that are now moving into the area. And again, like I said, in the past, people moved here for different reasons. I mean, you had families that were escaping wars, and those families were affluent. They had the means to be able to come and maybe purchase a home or rent a home. These are the families now, they're struggling, and so they have to do what they can to just survive. So that's why they live with other families until they can get it together and move out on their own. So it's a lot of different factors that play into it. But I think Jefferson Parish, like Sal said, has been more acceptable of these families for different reasons, and that's why they're deciding to move here. And Kenner is just, you can drive down Williams Boulevard and see the change in the past 5 years of those businesses. You can, before you drive by and you'd see one Mexican restaurant, and then you continue on and maybe see your Kenner supermarket. But now every block, it's a coffee shop, a supermarket, a restaurant, a cleaners or something. It's owned by or managed by a Latino.
40%, most of those big neighborhoods in Kenner, away from the lake, 40% Latino.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Sal, you hit my hot button. Politics is what drives this. And I've always been a proponent. I'm going back to when I lived in Kenner. Was like, why can't we get a Hispanic to run back in the Green Lawn area, Loyola area, run for school board, run for council person, okay? As a matter of fact, if there was ever a coalition and you could make sure that all that Hispanic population in Kenner was registered, you'd probably win a mayoral election.
Yeah.
Yeah, if they went out and voted, yeah, definitely. Actually, there's going to probably be a Latina running for the school system, for the school board this year. She's there right now. She's for District 6, Diane. I know her by her maiden name, Diane Castro, but now she's Diane Schnell. And if you see her, you probably wouldn't assume that she's Latina, but she is. Her parents are from Honduras, but she was born and raised here, and she's a friend of mine, childhood friend. So one day I posted on Facebook how I felt about not having representation on the school board.
I remember that.
You know,
right.
Okay. You know, being that the Hispanic population is so high, it's up there. It's Black, Hispanic, and whites and others. Okay, that's how it is. And I said, I cannot believe. So then everybody was saying, well, you should run for it. I'm like, no, thank you. I've already contributed, blood, sweat, and tears to the school system for almost 18 years. No, thank you. But I know there are people here capable of doing that.
Right.
You know, so then that's when Diane stepped up. And so hopefully she'll be running for the seat in October.
I wish her last name was still Castro, though. I mean, why is she? It's like I told my niece Ariana Longoria that if she loses her last name, she'll be out of my will. You know what I mean? She's got to be a Longoria till she dies. I mean, as if to become like Ariana Smith or something. No way.
I kept mine. I kept my last name.
So. I really did. I think it's important.
There's another aspect that is extremely important to consider as to why the current situation of Latinos moving from New Orleans into Jefferson Parish. And you guys have touched in some very important aspects such as economics, education, but there's something else missing, and is security. There's a lot of, as we know, New Orleans has become the crime capital of the U.S., a title that is shameful to even mention. But that has a lot to do with a lot of people moving from New Orleans into Jefferson Parish. And lastly,
in general,
and lastly, politics. I love to talk about politics because that's what I went to school for, politics. And really, the reason why we haven't gotten our stuff together is because people create these coalitions, but they create these coalitions based on a particular political party, and that is a big disconnect because some people that might like to join this coalition, but yet if it's associated with X political party, then it becomes like, well, I'm not, I don't sympathize with that political party, or I don't belong to a political party. So that has been the problem. And the problem is, I'm going to say it right here. The most disunion communities or community and that I've seen either in New Orleans or Jefferson Parish is the Latino community. Except for a few people, like I know for a fact, like the Guatemalans are very united, Cubans are very united, but Hondurans, we are the most, well, or at least, before, but Hondurans is the most disunited community in the area. That's a sad thing for me to say.
It's a fact.
It's a fact. It is a fact, and it's sad to say it, but it has to do with what we just touched upon, politics, and most of those people that left Honduras either by that we came here to study, and back home upper middle class or wealthy people who can afford to send someone to go to school at Loyola or Tulane, and the other influx of people who really escaped Honduras. People, people ask me, remember when the caravans used to first start?
The caravans, yeah.
People, I had a lot of American friends who will ask me.
Did you come that way? Did
No,
they ask you?
they
Did you
didn't ask
come
me
that way?
But why are those
Yeah, 'cause they
people
will.
coming?
Yeah,
You
yeah, yeah.
know, and there's a lot of implications that that if you get your story on that on the media, on the mainstream media, you will never understand why those people will risk their lives to come and look for a different outlook on their lives, basically.
On life.
Okay.
This is going to be airing at the beginning of pull it up, pardon me. We'll cut this out. This interview is going to be airing at the beginning of the Hispanic Heritage Month. For each of you, when you hear that phrase, what does it mean to you?
Well, because I help organize a festival that does celebrate Hispanic heritage, and I've been doing it for 11 years now. It's the period between September 15th and October 15th, which the United States recognizes our group as, you know, and celebrates our contributions to the United States and our accomplishments. And for 30 days, you know, everyone is talking about the Hispanics and the Latinos, and they, you know, you see little segments on television perhaps, or little shows or something. But to me, it means, well, at least we have some acknowledgement and some recognition of our contributions to this country. That's what it means to me. And we put on this festival in our community to not so much for us. Yes, we gather, we have fun, because when you have a group of Latinos that are enjoying food, music, and dance and all that, it does become a huge party and we all celebrate together, but more to educate the non-Latinos about our culture, our rich culture, and our heritage, because we do have a very rich culture when it comes to traditions, to food, to music, to, I mean, everything. And it's not just one country, it's each country contributes, because although we speak the same language, we all eat different foods, we all have different genres of music, the way that I mean, you can, Mexicans have their mariachi, Cubans have the salsa and the guaguancó and all that, the cha-cha-cha. I mean, Honduras has la punta, so all of this together, I mean, it's rich. And so the festival, that's one of the objectives too, is to be able to educate the non-Latinos about our culture and how we want to keep these traditions alive. It's the essence of who we are. If we don't continue it, who will?
I agree 100% with what Brenda's saying. I think now more than ever, we need to, Hispanic Heritage can recognize our numbers, which we are not even aware of, our contributions today and historically, and and again, the richness of our culture, and how much of New Orleans culture is like ours, the food, the carnivals, the celebrations, so many of the traditions of this city are related to Latin America. And at the same time, though, I think that it's also an opportunity, which has been a missed opportunity generally, to refute a lot of the misconceptions and the misinformation and the lies about Latinos generally, certain demographics between Latinos, the undocumented and all that, because there's a lot of BS out there about, who we are and what we're doing in this country. And I think it's a chance to not only lift us up and say who we are and our numbers and our culture and our contributions, but also hopefully a chance to educate people about the facts about our community and dispel some of those myths and lies that are out there all over the place.
Yeah.
I mean, jambalaya is jambalaya because of la paella in Spain. A lot of people don't realize that. They say, well, paella is yellow and jambalaya is red. Well, it's because they didn't have the spices. They didn't have the spices and the seasonings here in Louisiana, so they started using tomato and okra, for the gumbo, but tomato for the jambalaya, and that's why it was darker. But all of that, comes from Spain. So it's all those little things that people, when I tell them, you didn't know this, and they're like, wow, I didn't see, the there was such an influence. It's like, oh yeah, we've been here for a long
Like
time.
Lucas says about the French Quarter. I still have a problem with the French Quarter, the whole term, the French Quarter, because,
Yeah.
1788, the Great Fire of New Orleans almost burned everything down. The Spanish rebuilt everything. It's all Spanish architecture.
Right.
So I really have a problem with like the Vieux Carré. I'm like, Vieux Carré? That was at La Calle Real, La Calle, it was like, it was all in Spanish, but it's almost
Like Calle Bourbon.
yeah, like they don't want, like they're embarrassed to admit that it was actually the Spanish that did that. But anyway, go on.
Right.
We got to take over.
At least recognizes.
Yeah.
Lucas or Max, you want to jump on that?
Yeah, for me, having the Hispanic Heritage Month, it showcases, the diversity and basically the contributions that many people are unaware. I grew up with when Carnival Latino used to be the biggest festival in the city of New Orleans. I was a part of the organization. We closed Canal Street. I mean, that was a big deal. And not only closed it for one day, but we fenced, the street on Thursday. And part of my the images that I'm going to showcase on my exhibit are precisely some images from the festival that I was fortunate that I took those pictures, that was a huge event. And then it became in decay when politics got involved with, and the infighting between,
Groups.
you and I, everybody knows who
Groups of people.
But now with the Cannon Festival, and I would say what Brenda was saying about that the mission of the Que Pasa Festival is amazing. How many people different from our culture attends the festival, Brenda? That's and that's amazing. And for me, that the fact that Jefferson Parish is taking the time, is making the effort to recognize our community with having this event, it speaks volumes of the parish. Simple as that.
And that was thanks to James Young. James Young? Is it James? Yeah. Was it? One of the
John Young.
John Young. I'm sorry, and I knew it was a J, but that it's like senior moment here. I'm already having them. John Young. Thanks to John Young, we interviewed him one afternoon, and he said, "Is there anything I can do for you guys?" And we said, "Yes, we'd like to do a festival in Jefferson Parish. Will you help us with that?" And he said, "Absolutely, I will help you." And he was the one that actually helped us get this going. And it's been going since 2011 was our first festival. It was a one-day festival. We had maybe 1,000 people in attendance. And now it's grown to a 2-week, throughout the years, we've changed it up a bit, but now it's a weekend, Saturday and Sunday, where we have thousands of people that come out. And for us, as long as people come out and acknowledge it and enjoy it, we're going to keep trying to do it. And this is thanks to also Cervantes Foundation. Cervantes Foundation was formed 40 years ago next month. That's how old the foundation is. It was formed by Guillermo de Wango from Cuba. Sal knew him. Yeah. And that gentleman was just so adamant about promoting our culture and our history and our rich heritage in this community through the arts. He wanted to promote our culture through the arts in the state of Louisiana. And he did what he could to continue our traditions. And when he passed away, we just had to find a way to continue his legacy, not in the way he was able to do it, because he was unique and he had a special way of promoting his foundation and putting on different events. But we were able to try to do it in the way, with this festival, at least to continue his legacy of letting people know that we are here and that our culture is rich and has to be acknowledged in some way, and also to help the newer generations continue our heritage.
Max, you want to have the last word on this? You're muted.
You're muted.
Can't hear you. What he's trying to say is, no.
There he is.
I was wondering why I was so quiet. No, really, I agree with my colleagues here as far as Hispanic Heritage Month. Being an immigrant, growing up where I grew up, some housing projects, matter of fact, Sal, Lucas, I lived in a housing project on Elysian Fields and Benefit. And all I could remember was being surrounded by brothers and fighting for my life back then. But of course, that was another world and another day, okay? But yes, I agree. Getting involved in the Hispanic community via the chamber back when I was in TV sales made me feel proud. It really did. I like helping my Hispanic brothers and sisters. Sometimes I try to help too much. I don't know.
Lost him again.
It muted again on you somehow.
Why am I doing this? Why am I muting? I got to get away from the mouse here. But anyway, yes, I thoroughly enjoy it. And I love having the Hispanic community showcased during that 1 month. And I will do everything in the world I can to help it.
And I think part of what Brenda was saying, I just have to mention, when you mentioned Guillermo and Cervantes, that I helped do the articles of incorporation.
I know.
He would put on theater from different countries in Latin America, like plays, which really showed the richness of our artistic history or whatever, cultural history. And that's something that I want, like the kids of those people you've been talking about, we've been talking about collectively, the kids born now in Kenner and stuff, of Cuban parents and Honduran grandparents and Guatemalan parents, to know that, that it's so vibrant. And so, in other words, I'm proud to be Cuban. I'm proud to be Hispanic and Latino, and I want them to feel that too. You know what I mean?
Correct.
And I think we have to be part of conveying that pride and that history to them.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. We just like I described myself, I was born and raised here in New Orleans. I was brought up bilingual and bicultural. My parents did not want me to forget where I come from. Right. So they instilled my heritage and my culture, my food, my music. But at the same time, they wanted me to assimilate and enjoy and take on this culture also, because I was born and raised here and I was living here and I was going to go to school here and everything. So I don't know any other lifestyle but a bicultural lifestyle. I can eat a baleada from Honduras, even though I'm not from Honduras, but I can enjoy a baleada. But at the same time, the next day, go down the street and buy myself a shrimp po' boy and enjoy that too. And I just can't tell you which one I like better, because that's just who I am. And also with the language, I can switch back from Spanish and English or combine it and speak Spanglish to you. And sometimes it happens and you don't even realize it's happening, but that's just who I am. I cannot separate that. So I think that although, like Sal's saying, the children of today that are being born here, they need to know where they come from and learn about their culture and their heritage and enjoy the theater in Spanish, but they can also enjoy theater in English too.
Yeah, it's a blessing.
It is a blessing. 2 in 1.
Final thoughts.
I'm just extremely proud to, have chosen to showcase my work as a photographer. And I'm also extremely proud to the fact that I'm going to be sharing that exhibit with a friend who's also an outstanding photographer, such as Cheryl Gerber. So I am looking forward to, to put the exhibit and for people to see my work. As I would say I'm a little known as a photographer, and I've done radio, but it's funny because most of my work has been admired by not the Hispanic community, but the Anglo-Saxon community. And I think that in part is because I cover I cover the Saints, the New Orleans Saints, but also because I do all these festivals that are not Latin festivals. But thanks to Que Pasa newspaper, we have published very exclusive images, of many events such as Jazz Fest. So I'm extremely humble and proud that you guys or whoever, chose me to show my work. I'm very appreciative, and so is my family.
Mhm.
Thank you, Lucas. I can't wait to see it.
I'll just say, in closing, thank JPAS for doing this. It's a great play. I mean,
Yes.
it's a great
Yes.
piece of theater that you're going to present. Thanks for having this panel. I'm honored to be with these folks that are in this panel too, because they're all, to each and every one of them, I admire and respect, and they're incredible folks. And thanks for the opportunity to really to showcase our community, which isn't really isn't an opportunity that we don't have often. So I'm humbled and honored, and I thank JPAS for this opportunity.
Well, thank you so much.
I was going to say the same thing. Thank you so much for bringing this play to the community. It's the story of many people. It's a lot of people have gone through similar situations. If you've seen the play or even seen the movie, to understand what's going on. And I think that by showcasing this play, you'll be able to also hook in the Latino community to come out and enjoy the fabulous performances that you all put on here in Jefferson Parish, in that theater. I mean, the Jefferson Performing Arts Center, that's a beautiful, beautiful venue that our families should know exists, and that they can step into it and go and enjoy, whether it's a play or concert or anything that comes to that center, that they will feel welcome, just like anybody else. Because although it's been there for a few years now, not many people, they just drive by it, don't realize what it is, because they haven't been able to attend anything there. But I think that now the community will be able to attend many more presentations there. And we thank you for taking in consideration in the Heights and bringing it to our audience here in Jefferson Parish and our community, especially during Hispanic Heritage Month.
Thank you. And you're absolutely right about this theater, because we really want it to become the center of cultural activity here in the parish. It's my favorite theater in the region. And you're right, nobody should not feel welcome and at home here.
Correct. And it's a beautiful venue, and it deserves, to be used in the appropriate manner, but also for families to enjoy it.
Absolutely.
Well, Todd, let me just wrap it up by saying that on behalf of Julie Carcamo and I, it was an honor and a privilege to work with you and Amy and this whole venture. Also to touch base again with Sal. I haven't seen Sal and worked with him in many, many years, to meet Lucas, who I've never met before. So it's really a privilege and an honor. And of course, Brenda and Javier, first class. I'd work with them anytime.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Max.
Well, I thank you all. This was an incredible conversation. I look forward to continuing it, because I think that this conversation must continue. This is a large community, and the more that we can break down the walls and use the art to do that, the better. And speaking of, In the Heights will open on October 7th. It will be here at JPAC. And tickets you can get by calling the box office at 504-885-2000, or by going online to jpas.org. Thank you all again.
Thank you.
Thank you,
so
Todd.
much.
Thank you.